Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. The Prime Minister left today to co-host the International Conference on Climate Resilient Pakistan in Geneva, and along with Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General, UN Secretary General. As he was leaving, he said leaving for Geneva today to co-host International Conference on Resilient Pakistan along with UN Secretary General will take the opportunity to present the case of flood victims before the world. I will also throw light on steps my government has taken for relief and rehabilitation. Humanity is at an inflection point in world history. Our actions today will shape the resilient future for our succeeding generations. Millions of Pakistanis affected by unprecedented devastation look for compassion and solidarity to build back better. We will place comprehensive post-disaster framework plan for recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction with resilience before development partners and friendly countries. Bridging funding gap is key to restore critical infrastructure, rebuild lives and livelihoods and revive economy. Those are the key elements of on the agenda as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, as far as Pakistan is concerned. For this conference, we'll be talking about the ramifications of this for overall the flood affectees at this time, the flood damage at this time as Pakistan moves into reconstruction and rehabilitation, which is a huge and monumental task. Of course, $30 billion has been the first assessment of the kind of funds that are needed at this time, but there's a huge gap in terms of what we have and what we need. We'll be talking about all of that today. I have with me Munir Ahmed, who's a geopolitical analyst, also an environmentalist. Thank you so much for being with us. I also have with me Ali Tawqir Sheikh, who is a climate expert. Thank you for being with us. And Dr. Hamid Khan Al-Mashriqi, who is an IR expert. Thank you for joining us today. Ji, Munir Sahab, we were earlier also talking about this. Of course, the devastation is extreme. We've talked about this before. There are no words left now to see the kind of plight that our people are in, our lands are in, our infrastructure is in as a result of this unprecedented climate damage. What are your hopes from this conference?
I strongly believe that Pakistan will get some long-term partnerships.
Okay.
And as the conference is meant to develop a resilient recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction framework for RF. And as the estimates, a post-disaster need assessment was prepared by Asian Development Bank, World Bank and European Union. I strongly believe that Pakistan would be getting, if not all the $31.2 billion, but maximum amount will be pledged here. And if the partnerships are developed in terms of a consortium for a post-disaster recovery and reconstruction, like in the context of resilient Pakistan, as they have promised, or they have envisaged the objective of the conference. I strongly believe Pakistan would be in like better position to have funds for rehabilitation and reconstruction. And let me share with you, as far as my knowledge is concerned, this is the first ever conference of donors with the support of UN in Geneva.
Okay.
And I never heard of such type of conference before that. It means that Pakistan's case was well projected at different forums, at UN General Assembly, SCO and SICA and other forums. And that has brought the world forward to climate justice frame of work for the entire what we are aimed at the conference of parties. And I believe like this would enhance developed world, their contribution into
I want to talk about that. Let me come
funds
back to
and loss and damage fund as well.
Let me come back to you. I'll go to Ali Tawqir Sahab. Ali Tawqir Sahab, one of the things that Munir Sahab has mentioned is that it will, the role of the international community, the role of the world. the case being well presented, the way it's been taken up. Um, it will be an unprecedented step if indeed we get that kind of support and they rally behind us in this huge catastrophe as far as Pakistan is concerned. In terms of donors, like we were earlier talking about, who can we expect, and what kind of a framework do you expect to see?
See, it's very hard to predict,
Okay.
but in general,
Hmm.
the world is in stress.
Okay.
Countries themselves are facing internal economic challenges,
Hmm.
be it UK, European countries, or the US.
Hmm.
And then the Ukrainian war,
Hmm.
and the commodity prices, and increasing inflation in the countries themselves. There's very little space available
Hmm.
for the policymakers for international finance,
Hmm.
international assistance on any issue, let alone climate change.
Okay.
On climate change, instead of helping other countries like Pakistan in destitute, their preference, I guess, will be their internal climate agenda, if at all. Now, having said that,
But are you as
When-
optimistic as Munir Saab, or do you think that?
when people come to a conference like this, they don't come to say no.
Okay.
They come, if they don't come with a checkbook, they come with some
Plan.
ideas.
Hmm.
And the ideas can be to engage
Hmm.
long term. And that's a good news for Pakistan.
Hmm.
Even if the commitments, immediate financial disbursement commitments are limited, and Pakistan will need that desperately.
Okay.
Um, if they commit to engage in a partnership for resilient development in the country, that will be good news for country. Remember, Pakistan has lost huge sums in all provinces, and mostly in very poor and distant districts. So I will look at it.
As a positive. Let me come back to you on that note. Let me go to Dr. Hameed. Ji, Dr. Hameed, I want to quote Ali Toki Saab when he says that when people come to these conferences, they don't come to say no. I mean, of course, that's a optimism that we feel, and of course, it must be based on experience when he says this. Do you agree? I mean, how optimistic are you with regard to this conference? The fact that we are co-chairing it, the fact that, of course, the way the UN Council General, also Secretary General, took it up, and the way that it's been, they've rallied behind this. What kind of response do you expect? Are you as optimistic? How would you look at it?
Thank you very much, Marukh. First of all, I would really like to applaud and praise United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Because he's been handling and presenting Pakistan's case very strongly on different forums, whether it was SCO in Sharm el Sheikh this year earlier or last year earlier, and whether it was the other conferences. But he's been, letting the world know that how catastrophic the situation of Pakistan is. But to be honest, sadly, the world could not respond what they should have. I mean, despite of all these financial crises, despite of Ukraine war, despite of everything, the world has to understand that the Pakistan's carbon emission participation is less than a half a percent of the rest of the world. So Pakistan is facing this climate change, catastrophe for having not been responsible for it. And this is the Pakistan's very strong point in which Pakistan's been explaining on different forums of the world, whether it is United Nations, whether it was SCO, whether it was World Economic Forum, and now in the conference in Geneva. I think that there are two very important points which Pakistan has to raise in this conference. One is the current situation about the restoration, rehabilitation, and recovery. But on the other hand, Pakistan has to alarm the rest of the world that there will be summer again, and Pakistan is not ready for any other calamity or anything like that. So the world has to take a very immediate supporting action for the Pakistan in terms of our financial support, in terms of our aids for the people who over 30 million people have been displaced because of that flood and all that calamity. So Pakistan's case is very strong. Like we have seen in SCO in Sharm el Sheikh, Africans, they were very strongly alarming the rest of the world that if there will be any more casualties or draft or anything happens, the world will be responsible for it. So Pakistan has to present the case similarly. That I mean, this is the time when world has to announce, not only announce, but world has help Pakistan, despite of Pakistan's current economical situation, Pakistan other internal situation. But the people of Pakistan have been suffering a lot because of the world, participation in making this 99% climate, effects on the weather issues. So I believe the world will take some action. This conference will be helpful, and I mean, Pakistan has to keep pursuing its case on different international forums, which will help Pakistan and it
Let
will
me
help the
let me come back to you, Dr. Hamid. Munir sahab, what Dr. Hamid is saying that also, whatever the damage that we've suffered, of course, reparation is a huge part of what we are saying to the world, but also preparation for what is to come. What kind of climate damage we can expect in the future, rains and summer, and the fact that have we done enough? Can we do enough? Those are two important questions, right? Even if we want to, we have limitations, we have limited resources. Again, like he said, economy is a huge problem at this time, and for us to relegate funds at this time, in that kind of scenario, you think that let's talk about preparation. Are we going to be able to get, I mean, climate resilient, of course, we're talking about future also, right?
A climate resilient Pakistan conference in Geneva is aimed at two things. First, it is developing resilient strategy for Pakistan, so that Pakistan should have an adaptation mechanism all over the country, and that would help Pakistan to adopt certain measures in different parts of the most vulnerable parts of Pakistan, and certainly it would help Pakistan to cope up all the measures that of the future disasters. The other part is the donor conference, and that what we are looking for in terms of funds from countries
For the future.
So I believe once that climate resilience strategy for Pakistan is developed, and it would be a long-term strategy, and it would also forge long-term partnerships, as I already mentioned. That is the foremost objective of the Geneva conference. And once it is achieved, every partner, development partner, and Pakistan government would have in mind that how they have to go about. And definitely, not only the post-disaster need assessment is made in terms of rehabilitation and reconstruction, but also they have kept the future development in mind, and future vulnerability and the hotspots in mind. So it would be a very comprehensive framework for Pakistan.
Ji, let's talk about, Ali Tawqeer Sahab, let's talk about the comprehensive framework that we're talking about. Donors, international donors, we were earlier also talking about. You think they will have, like you said, if they're going to come up with solutions, then they will have plans in mind, maybe public-private partnerships, or how do you think? I mean, what kind of framework will it, in your opinion? I mean, of course, I know that this is circumspection.
Dekhiye, from Pakistan's point of view, I know, and all of us know, that Pakistan is in a very serious financial situation. Leaving that IMF-related issues aside, this is a conference about resilience. That's what the Pakistan's presentation will focus on. And that's very, very long term.
Okay.
Yeah.
IMF-related crisis is a very short term.
Okay.
Resilience is decadal. It will take several years to come back. So it's less about dollars and more about partnerships.
Which will take decades.
Which will take decades. So it is in Pakistan's interest to involve these participants, at least some of them, in long-term commitment to help us implement what our plans are. They are not supposed to come
Okay.
back to us with solutions.
We are
We need to go back with solutions.
and we want to go back with solutions and ask their assistance with
Yes.
implementing those.
And
you're saying,
our
yeah.
solutions would mean that we are on the driving seat. It's not donor driven. It would mean that we are asking them that we want to do the following 3 or 5 things. And I think things that we want to do will not cost a lot of money, but their implementation may cost a lot, and that we will need international assistance.
But
For
what about,
example,
you think that there will be structural changes involved?
it will require structural changes if we don't want to lose $30 billion next time.
Okay.
If we want to be resilient, that means our houses and our communities should not be in the way of the water.
Okay.
No matter how much rain is there, no matter how big the floods are, our housings, communities need to be away from that.
So
We don't need
essentially
to
it means
construct
urban
hotels.
planning and
Just
all that.
1 second, kindly, if you allow me to. Our hotels, be it a honeymoon hotel or any other name, should not be on the river bank.
Urban planning, you're saying, no?
River banks need to be protected like sacred places.
Okay.
For us to reduce our expenditures next time on this thing, we need to international community that we are strengthening our governance and our planning for housing and housing standards and their materials and their locations in such a way that in future we promise nobody will die unnecessarily and nobody will lose his house only because it's poorly constructed. We don't want to be spending our money on same things again and again. Remember, it's a developing country. We have competing demands. We have to develop our economy. We have to bounce back. And the only way to bounce back is to ensure that our governance of urban planning and rural planning is strong and robust. And if we can assure the participant of this, I think I can anticipate long-term partners coming.
Okay, let me
partnerships
come back.
coming.
Dr. Hameed, on that note, the kind of pledges and assurances needed, of course, the Prime Minister himself is going to co-host this. So our seriousness, is undoubtable at this time in terms of pledging that kind of. But the long-term support which Ali Taqir Saab is talking about will need, in your opinion, long-term planning as far as Pakistan is concerned, whether it's urban planning, whether it's enforcement, governance, all of those things.
Definitely. Maruk, first of all, again, I'm very sadly objecting that why do we call it a donors conference? They should not be donors. They are the responsibles because these are the countries who are responsible for all that climate change in the world. So instead of these countries calling them donors for Pakistan, they are responsible and they should have been paying the cost of Pakistan's loss not as a pledges, as their responsibility, which because they are responsible for it. Yes, on that point, when Mr. Takir was saying that, there should not be any hotels on the banks of the rivers. Yes, if I would like to remind you, 2005, after the earthquake in 2005, there was a complete SOPs defined and objectively adopted by the government that there are some SOPs or in terms of construction the houses and in terms of constructing the hotels and everything. But unfortunately, the local governments and the provincial governments could not follow those rules. So now this is the time when Pakistan government and the provincial governments and AJK government and all the governments, they have to take the responsibility to implement the rules and laws of the planning permissions and the construction. Of course, it has to be measured because it is in the benefit not only of the people of Pakistan, it is in the benefit of the of our economy, it is in the benefit of saving the so many lives. But I would say that this is the time when Pakistan has to make its case very strong, not as a country who's looking for the donations, rather as a country who wants the rest of the world to take the responsibility of all that climate change which Pakistan is suffering for unfairly. We do not have our contribution in carbon emission. So if Pakistan would driven its case towards in this point of view, I think the world will understand even better, like African countries are doing. That they are saying that we are not we do not have that big industries, we do not have that many pollution, we do not have that many of thousands of cars, but still we pay the price for it. Similar cases for Pakistan. Pakistan northern areas, Pakistan's areas which have been affected badly, they do not have that much, factories or infrastructure or anything. So I believe that the world has to understand that, and Pakistan cannot, Pakistan is a resilient country. People of Pakistan are resilient, but there is a limit what we can do, what we can practically do. So until and unless the world will not come together with us, it would be very hard for people of Pakistan and for the government of Pakistan to do all that infrastructure, restoration,
Right, Dr.
rehabilitation.
Hamid, let me go to Munir Sab. Munir Sab, in terms of reduction in fossil fuels, of course, making sure that we're adequately ready as far as prepared for next monsoon or the kind of damage that we will see. What about reduction? Is the world working towards that also? Are we seeing sufficient effort towards reducing fossil fuels, reducing the effect of overall climate damage on countries like us, for example?
The developed world is not reducing their carbon emissions.
Okay.
They are rather buying credits from the more environment friendly countries.
Okay.
And secondly, after the Russia has stopped supply of the gas and oil to Europe, they have started building up, like they have opted the new strategy of using coal for their generating more energy for
Okay.
their consumption in the industry and at their household. So I believe, like in the coming years, if the conflict, the geopolitical conflicts are not resolved, the carbon emissions will increase.
What about international law on this? Do we have any provisions that deal with the concept of reparation or the concept of this kind of damage emanating from carbon emissions or fossil, all of that, climate damage that results from that?
There is that we have a green climate fund, and now they have established loss and damage fund as well. We have such kind of mechanism, and there is also
But is there
the
penalties?
parties have agreed on reducing carbon emissions. Even we are talking about net zero as well. But even then, if the developed world are making more resolutions to use coal-fired power plants. So it means like they are not bothered by what they have agreed in the conference of parties. And moreover, like if they are not contributing to Green Climate Fund, or the Loss and Damage Fund still has to develop its TORs. And the situation is not that bright as we could see. We spend a lot of money every year for the negotiations in the conference of parties, but whatever the developed world agrees, and recently as Pakistan has propagated the climate justice, and the people have agreed to it, that the responsible countries shall be contributing to such kind of losses that Pakistan has suffered in the monsoon last year.
But do you
But
think this
still, there are only words that we see.
But what about this conference, Ali Tawqeed Sahab, what about this conference, the fact that of course it's an unprecedented step? Do you think it will motivate the world to go, perhaps have TORs faster, or work towards, a framework which is then also, it's something that's enforceable to a degree? Do you think that we're working towards that?
We want to understand some basic ground rules first.
Okay.
This is not a conference about climate justice.
Okay.
We cannot go and claim any rights.
Okay.
We can go there and plead on basis of human solidarity.
Okay.
We have millions of people in destitute. It's a developing country. We have not emitted too many emissions, even though we should acknowledge that we are very inefficient.
Okay.
Our emissions are far more than our economic growth rate.
Okay.
And that is not acceptable to us, we need to say that, and to the world.
Okay.
But having said that, in percentage terms, our emissions are very less. And we are victim at places that people cannot guess.
Okay.
at the high altitude of Himalayas in Gilgit and Baltistan.
Hmm.
Those people don't have any carbon footprint, but they're the victims.
Hmm.
In the rural Sindh, where torrential rain happened and our infrastructure did not allow the water to escape.
Hmm.
So many weeks after the flood, the water was still standing and their crops were destroyed, their houses were destroyed, their schools and hospitals were destroyed.
Hmm.
So we may be victims of climate change,
Okay,
but
you-
we cannot claim the right.
Okay.
Having said that,
Hmm.
Pakistan's best case is that we are serious about it.
Okay.
Not only we are serious victims, but we are heroes of it. We have fought with courage,
Hmm.
will continue to fight with courage.
Hmm.
But then we are also architects or co-architects of new global architecture for this,
Okay.
such as the Loss and Damage Fund.
Hmm. Hmm.
At the climate summit a few months ago, Pakistan was very active, and we need to take credit for that.
Okay.
Having said that, that's not an investment of quick returns from this conference.
Hmm.
From this conference, what we expect is a firm seal of endorsement
Okay.
that Mr. Government of Pakistan and people of Pakistan, the commitment need to address both. Mr. Government of Pakistan, we will support you.
Okay.
And Mr. People of Pakistan, we stand by you. You tell us and you share with us your long-term commitment that how you will become resilient. And then in the document that we are carrying, it's a very comprehensive document. We're saying that we'll restore livelihoods.
Okay.
We're saying that we will restore infrastructure. And we are saying that we will become more inclusive, which means more gender inclusion, that youth inclusion, inclusion of minorities, and inclusion of the poor.
So
it
it
is
depends-
committed in the document.
So there's a lot that we are promising and pledging also.
We are promising inclusiveness because we are recognizing that a lot of this damage happened because our development pattern last several decades was not very inclusive.
Okay.
The document says that in its strategic objective.
Okay.
Now, if the Prime Minister is able to say that tomorrow afternoon in the meeting, and I am sure Mr. Shahbaz Sharif will say that, that will be a very pride moment for Pakistan because we will be making that commitment in front of the global community who will hopefully be willing to partner with us in coming decades.
Okay.
Now, if they commit to us to work with us, what will be our priorities? That is what we want to know.
Okay.
18 out of the 25 least developed districts of Pakistan in Balochistan and Sindh are the most devastated ones.
Okay, I want to talk more about these districts. I'll come back to you. Let me go to Dr. Hameed. Ji, Dr. Hameed, I think that's an interesting take on the donor conference and perhaps a more realistic one that Ali Tawqir Shah is talking about. He's saying that, we cannot go, we have to go to this conference with, redressal on the agenda, with the fact that we need help and that we are victims, but also pledging a lot that needs to be done. Of course, that pledge will be long term. The kind of structural changes needed, the kind of commitment that is needed from us is going to be over decades because obviously the damage and the potential for more damage in the coming years is also there. How hopeful are you? Of course, we have a Prime Minister at the moment who is pledging to do all these things. Overall, in terms of our own problems at home, unfortunately, over decades now, how hopeful are you for us to be able to deal with those challenges that will, of course, come forward, regardless of whoever is at the helm of affairs?
No, to be honest, I'm very optimistic and I'm very hopeful that this conference will bring something good for people of Pakistan and for the government. It will be I hope they will come up with some encouraging announcements from this conference because the reason is that it is a great achievement for Pakistan anyway that to be able to hold a conference and co-hosting a conference on such for the first time, or I would say on a very unique topic, and the agenda is very clear that how to help mainly for the countries who are suffering, and then Pakistan have suffered the most. So I am very hopeful that Pakistan would be able to get some good responses from the rest of the world and from the countries like United States and then world organizations as well. But at the same time, I would again emphasize that Pakistan needs to ask the world that this is not going to be a short term thing. It has to be a long term support for Pakistan and for the rest of the world. I mean, I agree that one of the participants was saying that the world, the Europe has started using the coal for their energy crisis. But again, Pakistan or the other countries should not be paying the price for it. There should be some more contribution from the Western world to help, these climate challenges. And
Dr.
I
Hamid,
think
certainly, I mean, of course, we agree with what you're saying, but don't you think, I mean, as far as international scenario is concerned, the world is concerned, of course, one being that we are dealing with a post-COVID world, the next being that, of course, the reality of international politics is that we are dealing, again, we are a developing country, and then we are dealing with nations not at par at this time. So for us to have that kind of, we're not, I mean, unfortunately coming from a position of strength. Of course, our case is strong. There's no denying that.
it is, I agree, but the only thing is that, I mean, unless I have I've been in Europe for many years. It is all depend how we convince them. If we will be able to convince them, and if we will be able to put our case in the right manner, right? It is no matter how many crises or economical situation they are facing, still their economies are much stronger than ours. Their financial reserves are much higher than we can even
But of course, that
anticipate.
doesn't mean that they will agree to pledge their money for us, even if their economies are stronger than ours. And let me come back to you. Munir sir, what is your take on this? Of course, I mean, as far as presenting the case is concerned, Dr. Hameed says that, it will depend a lot on that. But I don't think anybody, I mean, as far as the sincerity is concerned, as far as our own, the Prime Minister and his team rallying their effort behind trying to achieve as much as possible, I don't think there can be two opinions on that. But, the kind of response that then comes, it will be dependent on a multitude of factors.
Certainly, it is not only depend on what you are presenting over there.
I mean, it's clear. I mean, of course, presenting wise, of course, we will be presenting, and I want to talk more about the document that Ali Taqir Saab is talking about and what's in it. But I mean, prima facie, we're a country that's suffering, has suffered so much damage to the tune of so many $1 billion. We've done little to contribute. I mean, those are the factors that are quite obvious. I mean, presentation can improve that. Maybe how much percentage?
That is. But unfortunately, last year the entire Europe was suffering from heat wave, and now they are suffering from the cold wave, this snowfall. So they are already having impact of climate change at their homes. On the other hand, they are suffering from the shortage of food, and energy crisis is there, and the highest inflation ever in Europe at the moment. So in this kind of scenario, what do you think, will they be, at the moment they are not able to cope up a challenge at their home. Will they be sporting a lot of money for you? This is the question. However,
Their own factors, of course.
however the case will be strong enough for the presentation, quote unquote. But I have a lot of hope out of the conference. But as I earlier mentioned, that it would be long-term commitments, but not immediately we will be getting too much money, and we should not be too much pessimist or optimist about
I
it.
think it's more about a case of realistically what can we expect. Let me go to Ali Taqir Saab. Ali Taqir Saab, you were talking about the document in some detail. What all does it entail? I mean, particularly, since you are cognizant of what we've presented we aim to present in the donor conference.
The document is about resilient development,
Okay.
reconstruction, and rehabilitation.
Okay.
Now, in other words, what it's saying is that if we have the resources, this is how we'll reconstruct and rehabilitate our affected population.
Okay.
What the world is waiting for or expecting from us is the other word, that is reforms,
Okay.
not just reconstruction. how would you reform to ensure that these things do not become as damaging next time around?
Okay.
And for this, the other word that also starts with R is resilience.
Okay.
That is our commitment that we want to have a resilient redevelopment. Now, for this, at the global level, Pakistan has 3 tracks to pursue. On one track, we are following is the loss and damage fund and its creation and Pakistan's access to it, and from other climate change funds. On the other, we are trying to generate more resources.
Okay.
This conference is only one venue. There are other venues, such as with EU. We have ongoing conversation that will come on the front burner in the coming weeks on the GSP plus.
Okay.
That's where we want their concessions. That's what we want, that Pakistan should be given a little bit of preferential treatment. And then the third track is we have the money or we don't have the money. The world supports us or we don't support us. We have a challenge at hand to resettle people, to rehabilitate their livelihoods and bounce back in economic terms. For all these 3 tracks, there are many stumbling blocks.
Okay.
Political stability is and one, successful conversation with the IMF is another one.
You think that will also be
That will
on
have
the
a
agenda?
bearing. Support from the province is another one. It's one of those rare conferences where the participation of provincial chief ministers became an issue and some are present there. So what we are seeing that Pakistan's federal system is such that federal government can do only something to some extent, and
The
beyond that
provinces
it
have
has
to
to be
rally behind
provinces
them.
to
Yes.
come and
Yes.
contribute. So in this complex situation, we should be very happy that the Secretary General has become a champion of Pakistan's cause. Now Pakistan has to make sure that we are able to honor some of these commitments by ensuring that our planning commission documents such as PC1s and PC2s are more climate smart and climate resilient.
Do you think it will be a piecemeal? Let me go to Munir Saab and I'll come back to you. Ji, Munir Saab, you were going to say something, I think. Ji.
As Takesh Saab mentioned, like in addition to these factors and elements, one thing is more important,
Okay.
that Pakistan needs to improve its governance structure.
Okay.
And there are so many lacunas in our governance that leads to malpractices and leakage of the funds that and it does not go to communities and where they need to go. And secondly, the community-based disaster risk reduction is already missing out of our strategies. And efficiency, we don't have efficient implementation plans. These 3 factors would also be considered when a large sum of money will be given to you for reconstruction, rehabilitation, or whatever climate resilient, Pakistan.
Do you think it will be a piecemeal, periodic kind of commitment kind of thing, that they will expect us to do certain things before, releasing money or
Certainly, certainly. They will not give you like all $1.2 billion at, okay, please, this is the money. But of course, like they will come in
they will have their own representatives, the donors.
And, but whatever money will come to Pakistan, that will have like first whatever strategy Pakistan agrees with European Union, Asian Development Bank, or World Bank. And as rightly mentioned, Sheikh Saab, that how we deal with IMF and other international financial institutions, because we are lagging behind on the implementation plan that we agreed with them. So that would also matters. And as I mentioned, governance will be a big question mark, that how you will be spending your money. In the last 1 decade, there are so many questions on the governance, and I'm sorry to say, whatever the rumors of corruption that the world is listening afterwards, do you think that they will give you a lot of money just in bulk and say, okay, you are the wonderful people and let's have and enjoy the ride?
Munir Saab, just to add to what you said, ma'am,
please.
if you allow me to.
Ji.
We need to understand, From Pakistan's point of view, this is about support on the floods.
Yeah.
From the world's point of view, it is support for Pakistan's resilience, which includes forest fires that we had, the heat waves that we had, the glacial melt that we had with the seawater intrusion. So a composite index of Pakistan's climate vulnerability, that is on the minds of the participants from the other side.
Okay.
From our side, as Pakistanis, we are thinking about the immediate damage. That's one. Second, from our point of view, it's about Pakistan's vulnerability, that we are in trouble, we are
Right,
in
of course.
destitute, and we need the support because people are out there in the cold with the children. But from the world's point of view, it's not about one disaster.
Okay.
It's about the series of disasters that Pakistan has faced, or may well, God forbid, in the
Face
coming
later.
months.
Right.
So these are two different mindsets. So the challenge for us and our delegation is to ensure that the idiom and the vocabulary and the narrative of Pakistan is in sync and aligned with the global thinking. They are not at clash.
Okay.
It's just that we are coming from two different directions. And I think Pakistani delegation has a great responsibility to ensure that the vulnerability of Pakistani people is understood by international community and they extend as long-term partnership.
Right. Dr. Hameed, your comments overall in conclusion. Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Thank you. No, I mean, I would say that if you look, our final comments, we all are agreed that there has to be, a very much requirement from the rest of the world to understand the need of Pakistan, in terms of support from the rest of the world. And there is no doubt, I will again emphasize that Pakistan, delegation, if as good as they will be able to present their case, Pakistan would have much better outcome. And if Pakistan can ensure the transparency of the usage of the funds and the resources, I think the world will help us and to save Pakistan from further calamities.
Right. Thank you so much for being with us, Munir Ahmed Saab. Thank you for joining us. Ali Tawqir Sheikh Saab, thank you for being with us today. Dr. Hameed Khan, thank you for joining us today. Of course, it's an unprecedented step for Pakistan. We've seen the way that the Prime Minister has rallied. We've seen the way that the UN Secretary General has rallied behind Pakistan in this unprecedented way. We will, of course, hope. We have our biggest, highest hopes with this conference, and we hope that we'll be able to achieve the kind of zeal and fervor, of course, of the delegation, of the Prime Minister with which they have gone. And we hope and pray that they are as successful as possible with regard to, of course, the procurement of funds, of redressal, of the kind of the climate reparation, the kind of damage that we are seeing at this time, of course, moving towards rehabilitation for our people, for the flood affectees, for the children at this time, for the livelihoods that have been lost due to this catastrophic disaster, and that the world will rally behind us. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.